I'm Kathy Johnson. Welcome to Town Talk. I'm here once again with Margaret Beeman, professional horsewoman and author of The Better Deal and Training for Safety. I'm so pleased to have Margaret once again. We're going to be doing a weekly show on this. I remind my listeners that this is going to be a weekly show, and I'm here not only with Margaret, but I'm here with the Boomer Cowgirls. We're going to affectionately refer to ourselves as the Boomer Cowgirls, and I think you're going to enjoy this show. If you're into horses and you love horsemanship, this is going to be the weekly show for you. Monday nights, 7:30, public access 10 in the Valley area, and also on YouTube. I'll turn the show over to Margaret Beeman. Margaret, it's a pleasure, always a pleasure to have you here, and the show is yours.
Well, thank you, Kathy. It's always a pleasure to be here, and I thank you for welcoming us back. And I want to thank my guests for coming back, the Boomer Cowgirls. We're all Boomer Cowgirls at our age, you know. We have Lois back again, and Noelle is with us again this week, and we have a new face, Lindsay. And we're going to talk about today the 5 parts of the circle. If you can put the outline up, we can show you where that is. This is actually, we were talking about how people like to build pyramids when they're teaching things, and this is actually the tippy top of the pyramid. It's the technical part of the horsemanship that we look at. And if there we go, there's the outline. On the very bottom, you'll see the 5 parts of the circle. We also have a little clip of those 5 parts of the circle that we can put up so we can go through them. The first one is backing straight, getting your horse to back straight, and this is groundwork. We're talking about doing this from the ground with a halter and lead rope, which is what we use as a rope halter and a rope lead rope. We can show this to people. We get our horse to back straight first, and then we get him to yield his front end over to go out onto the circle. We ask him to move forward willingly, soft to us. We ask him to disengage his hindquarter and also to stop straight. Those are the 5 movements that we use. And I tell people when they start with me, it doesn't matter if you just have a horse for a pet you like to spend time with, or you trail ride, or if you're going to ride, you're destined for Grand Prix dressage. Those 5 movements are the only 5 movements you'll ever need to train your horse to do, because those are how a horse arranges himself to go forward, to go back, to go right, to go left. And this is a picture of those 5 movements. I didn't see the clip come up, so we kind of got started in the middle of it. The reason we chose this is draft horses move kind of slow. I want you to pay attention to this horse's feet. He's moving forward willingly, soft to the young girl on the left. And the sequence of the footfall, inside hind, inside front, outside hind, outside front. She's getting ready to disengage him. Watch the hind feet. You'll see it cross over. She wasn't too happy with that. She was going to ask again. The inside hind foot crosses over, and then he stops straight. Now she'll bring the front end around, the front feet around, and he'll go around the other side. And if you'll notice, this young girl isn't holding tight on the rope. Every once in a while, she'll take up a little bit and she'll ask the horse to be soft to her. But the idea is to move around the horse in all 4 quarters of the horse comfortably, with the horse respecting you and understanding what's expected of him. We want to make sure that our horse can yield from all 4 quarters. There's the hind feet crossing over, stopping straight. Well, not quite. There we go. Now we're standing up. Move the front feet over and then walk out on the circle. This is how most of the students I work with start. It's very important, and everyone here will attest. If you've known me for any longer than 10 minutes and worked with me with a horse, you'll hear the phrase, watch his feet. Watch his feet. If the feet go there, the horse will go there. Not only that, you're in better balance when you work with that horse. and you're looking at his feet. And I think all of you have heard that phrase and have used that phrase with people that you've been working with. Both Lois and Noelle have been with me quite a while, and they'll stop sometimes at the workshops and help the student and say, watch his feet. And inevitably they'll start working with the horse, and then they'll start looking at the horse or start looking at his head to try to see what the horse is thinking. And the minute you do that, you change your position, you change your point of balance, and the horse feels something different. Where if you're watching the feet and you're putting the energy behind the horse, driving him forward, it's easy for the horse to understand. And the other biggie about watching the horse's feet is your emotions don't get involved.
As I like to say, the eyes lie.
Because you look up, if you're asking your horse to do something and the horse isn't doing it, and you look up at the horse, maybe the horse isn't getting it and his head is back or he's looking at you a little funny, all of a sudden you change what you're doing, you hesitate, and the horse feels that.
Very true.
The horse senses that because he is a herd animal, he's a social creature, it's in his nature to get along, and they follow the laws of linear hierarchy. He's looking to you for direction, so he's supposed to be answering the question, asking the questions, not you. And when you're learning, you try something, or you apply a cue, or you apply pressure, and then you look at the horse to see if the horse is getting it. And that changes things. If on the groundwork, if you can keep your eyes on the feet, if the foot goes there, the horse goes there.
Can you talk for a minute about the importance of not just the rope halter, but of the flag, which is the other essential tool?
Right.
Because you can't really work the parts of the circle with the rope halter unless you have the flag, too.
Right.
So.
Well, with the rope halter, you always have what we call the term slack in the lead rope. You want that little loop like that. You don't want to have any pressure. If you need to say something to your horse, you just do a little reminder like that. The flag is what drives the horse forward. I tell the people, if you think of the rope halter and the rope as your hands on the reins, because I always get the question, what does this have to do with riding? What does this have to do with driving? It has to do with getting to know your horse and how much or how little it takes for him to understand you, and for you to become familiar with all 4 quarters of him. So the rope halter and the lead is like your hands on the reins. Your flag is like your leg. It's what drives the horse forward. And you use the flag to get your horse to yield forward, to go forward. You use the flag behind the hind feet to get the horse to go. And you will also use the flag if anybody is like in lunging, or the horse begins to come towards you with his front quarter, you can just lift the flag up and let him know it's an extension of your hand. You need to stay out on the circle.
And out of your space.
Right.
Which is the beginning of defining what's your space versus...
Right. So your horse can go in a circle. You know, a lot of people, I'll see people that, we can talk a little bit about lunging. Most folks are familiar with that term when they begin riding, and you hear the term, well, he's a little fresh this morning, so I want to lunge him and get the edge off, right?
Yes.
I want to lunge him and get the edge off.
Absolutely.
I had a very thing.
Yes, I did. You're right. That's right.
Especially
yes,
as we get to be boomers, right?
Yes.
The biggest difference between lunging
horse.
your horse before you ride and doing your circle work before you ride is that when you lunge your horse, you get a fit, untrained horse.
See, I had no
With
idea.
your circle work,
Right.
you're working on your training every step of the way.
Yes.
So the idea of the circle work and the authentic horsemanship is to gain control of the horse's feet through his mind. Where lunging, what I say to people, can you stop, go, turn right, turn left, and make transitions when you want to, when you're lunging? And sometimes I get a blank look. It's like usually people come out with their lunge line and whatever draw reins, whatever they have on the horse, and there's no real specific cue for the horse to walk off. No. Sometimes the person will back up and get the horse to walk around, or sometimes the horse will just trot off. Where with the circle work, you're facing your horse has to wait for you. He has to wait for you, and you tell him to get ready. You raise your hand and say, get ready, and you ask him to back, and he backs straight, which is respectfully, and then you ask him to just move his front feet over. So you're separating your hindquarters and your front end when you're doing this work. You're gaining control of each quarter of that horse. And then you walk off, you prepare him for your transitions up and down, you disengage the horse, he stops facing you. Many people who lunge don't like the horse to face you. They want them,
Yes, I was always told
that's
and
how
they
I
say, no,
learned.
no, 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 you can't do that.
don't
no,
have
him
face
he's,
you.
He's not
Yes.
supposed to face you. Well,
Yeah.
maybe down the road you can teach him to do that. When I'm asking a horse to face me, I'm working on him yielding his hind foot to me, his hind quarter to me. I'm working on acknowledgement and respect and moving when I want him to move and looking to me for direction. I'm not working on a technical thing. I want you to stop this way.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Once you gain control of all four of your quarters, then you can again add another layer of training and ask for that. But if you don't have that control, and you have a horse that won't disengage or doesn't understand disengagement of the hind quarter, if something happens and he spooks or bolts, what do you have to control him? Your strength.
Not
stronger.
Not at all.
Yeah. We're
Not
not,
at all.
we're not as strong. We can't do that.
No.
Sorry. Is there a reason why? I know a lot of people love those fancy leather halters. Is there a reason why, Margaret? One of the things that was different for me when I started out was that this, and it took me a couple of weeks to learn to tie it right. But why that halter?
Okay. Your leather or nylon halters are flat.
Yeah.
Okay, with these halters are built out of a round rope and it's double. Okay, so there's more of a feeling here. When you ask to do something, you move this halter around, the horse can feel it on his nose, where a flat surface it doesn't. The halter and lead has no metal parts. It's all rope. It will not break. And there's different theories behind this. You have the panic halters, the breakaway halters that are nylon with the thin leather crown piece and stuff. I don't, I was raised and believing in authentic horsemanship. If you're going to be around horses, you need to learn how to carry a jackknife. If a horse gets in trouble, you cut him loose. You don't want the horse to break the halter, because once that happens, that's a habit that the horse develops. He thinks he can get away. So then, and I've had several people come into my barn that will not, they always bring a friend to hold their horse because the horse will not tie. You can reintroduce that to them. You can teach them to respond to pressure and to tie again without pulling the halter. It's a pretty dramatic training series. A lot of people don't like to go through it. But once a horse realizes he can break away, he's dangerous, because he will continue to try to do that. And also, it's the confinement. A horse has a natural fear of confinement, so when he comes against that pressure, if he hasn't learned to give to the pressure, he'll fight it through panic because he's confined, and he'll break the halter.
Well, that reminds me of something I learned years ago when I first started out with my horses, is that when a horse learns something, they don't forget, and you better make sure they've learned it the right way, because it's too hard to change it after that. And what you're describing is you want them that they're a creature of remembering, almost like an elephant, you know?
Yeah, and a creature of habit.
Yes.
And a creature of habit. The other thing about the halter is where the knots are placed. They're at key points, key pressure points, and the balance of the halter is so that you just basically have to wiggle your wrist a little bit, and you can send a message to your horse. Light nylon material, you can't raise your hand and have your horse feel that. He doesn't feel it. You have to almost make contact and pressure before he can feel it. The weight of these halters is designed, it's like I say to people, remember when you went to first grade, they gave you the big fat pencil, the big fat pencils?
Remember those?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the tool for the job to get the training done on your horse. Once your horse is trained and does know the work, you can put anything on his head and get this. go
Right.
back to this if the training begins
I
to
see.
slide.
I
You know, your halter and your lead, I've had these halters, some of these for 35 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Took
But
me-
what we do when we start out with Margaret is we all got thick reins
Right.
that basically mimic the size of the
The rope.
too,
And I have those. I have
so
those,
that you can feel what you're doing, and it's exactly the same feel whether you're on the ground or whether you're in this under saddle.
Right. And
Which-
the horse can
which was
feel
really
you.
helpful.
Yeah.
Yes.
The horse can feel you. When you
Right.
lift a rope of this weight, or you lift a rein of that weight, it gives the horse time to get ready, because of the 2 seconds it takes for the horse to
Right.
process that message. You have to take a light lead rope or a nylon flat lead rope, and you actually have to get pressure before the horse can feel anything. With this, he can feel you coming. And it's the same reason for you raising your hand to get your horse to move on the ground. That 101, 102 is the indication to the horse it's time to bring life to your feet and do something. You don't just ask him to do it, you prepare him to do it.
Right.
The other thing that probably that shouldn't be taken lightly is the importance of learning how to use the flag,
Right.
which Noelle and I, back in the early days, our horses were panicked over the thought of it. And when you'd go to a
So-
traditional English barn, they say, "Don't use the flag, don't
right.
use the flag, it'll scare all the other
Yes.
horses." But there was a substantial amount of time in just acclimating our horses to the flags. And we got to the point where we could wave the flag on both sides of their
Right.
head, like violently almost,
In between their legs.
in between their legs, and they
Yeah.
just
Carry them.
stand.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that was a whole learning process.
And that
for
happened.
me,
That
anyway.
happened after you learn, because of course you take somebody who doesn't know what they're doing and give them a horse with a rope halter they're not used to and a flag. They're
And
trying
they
to do
think you're
something
trying
they
to
don't
strike
realize
them.
where the flag is going.
Right.
So the horse is like they don't know what they're doing. But that's a learning process, and it's part of learning to gain control of your horse and be safe. The horse gets to know you.
Yeah.
He knows when you're learning and you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
You know.
That's
That's right.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I never go in to get Calypso in the herd without my flag. I learned that the hard way. Okay, when Percy broke through a wire that wasn't live and just ran through it, So I learned the value of the flag,
Right.
and it was so new to me when I first started with
Yeah.
Margaret's method.
It's very new, and it's very new to when
Well,
the horse
and I
hasn't
want
been
to
used to it,
clarify
too.
a little bit too, because you say when I go out to get Calypso, I'm sure many of our listeners, you carry a flag to catch your what
Yeah,
is that all about? If you're in a boarding stable situation and your horse is turned out, maybe they're turned out in general turnout or whatever. It's very hard to practice this at
Yes.
public
Yes.
facilities and boarding facilities. These gals all have their horses at home. And
Right.
you're boarding with somebody who believes in authentic horsemanship and has the horse out in the herd.
Right.
So that's why you take the flag out in the pasture, because there might be a dominant horse. There might be, you might need to get your horse out the gate, and horses come and crowd the gate, and you just use the flag
And that's
to
they
drive
move
them back.
yeah.
And I'm sure you can attest to this. It doesn't bother Calypso when you flip the flag at the other horses, does it?
No,
See, he does
Not at all.
not at
Yes,
all.
it's
He
not,
knows. He knows you've
And
taken
he's-
control.
He's loose.
Yep.
Yes.
Now,
And when I walk in and I'm watching the feet, they don't run away.
Yep.
I when I'm watching the feet and I get between them and I have my flag and Calypso knows it's me and he's there and we're good. I don't have to chase him all over the place.
Right. Right. It's a much different way of approaching catching up a horse and working.
And one last thing, it took me 2 weeks to figure out how to tie that halter. Yes.
Noelle and
I
are
totally
we're
get that.
slow learners.
I mean, I
Out of
felt
the rabbit
got it last
hole,
week, right?
down the rabbit, around the.
I have to say, I felt like a 2-year-old learning to tie my shoe again,
too.
Yeah.
But anyway,
No, it does. It takes a while.
did.
All of this is time consuming.
yeah.
And
Well,
you
it's
have to
it's
decide you
education
wanna do
and
it.
learning.
It
I mean,
is.
if you you can't expect to put there's the human and there's a horse. The horse is 10 times bigger than you generally, or about 10 times bigger than you. It's a different species. It's a different culture. So, we're supposed to be so intelligent, so we can't put it together just like that, especially at our age.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of women that are getting back into horses, that want to be around horses, that maybe were around horses when they were children, and they try to get back into it, and it's all different, and things are happening, and they're getting their feet stepped on, they're getting knocked over, they're coming off. It's not like it was when I was a kid. Well, children, the reason children and horses get along so well,
Yes, why? We
they don't
always
have an
did.
agenda.
See, we didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know. We got along great.
Kids just want to be, they're just having fun being with the horse, and it's relaxing for the horse, and it's fun, and they can see that there's no agenda there. They can sense when the adult comes and, well, we're going to put the saddle on, and we're going to do this, we're going to walk Tropicana, we're going to work on lateral work, we have this plan,
Yeah.
Right?
and sometimes that really goes south with your horse unless you can practice these skills and slow yourself down,
That's right.
Lindsay, what was the hardest part of the circle work for you to learn?
The 2-second
The 2
piece,
seconds.
Right.
the 2-second piece, and to only ask for one thing at a time. And of course, at first, I shouted it. I mean, not physically, but and of course, the horse just went crazy. And then, little by little, I mean, what introduced me is that I said, Margaret, I've got this horse that I'm a little bit afraid of. I've been run away with. It's not good. And she goes, well, have you taught the horse to stop?
No.
Well.
What do you mean?
What does that mean?
So once again, the disengaging. And when Margaret was explaining that when their hind legs cross, they're at a kind of like us standing on one foot, a little bit of eek, and they seek balance. And then they come through and you say, thanks. But until that has happened, you're not saying thanks. You're saying, yes, thank you. And so that kind of timing was something that I had no knowledge of.
And once you got that, you could feel it under saddle, couldn't you?
I could feel it under
that's
saddle,
great.
and you helped me by going, and I go, oh, I feel the dip, and practice.
Right.
And we practiced really slowly.
Yes.
And
Did
really
you do
slow.
it
Great.
under saddle or on the
Yeah,
ground
under
to
s-
finally
first-
get the
Well, first
connection?
on the ground,
Okay.
and what surprised me was once again the weight of the rope. Not much, and all of a sudden this horse
Right.
would turn and everything, and then under saddle, Margaret would say, "And cross." I go, "Okay, could you do it again?"
Right.
It was hard to because I kept
Very difficult.
because I had an agenda instead of just sitting there waiting for the feeling to happen. And I
Was
think
it an older horse, a younger horse, in
a
between?
medium-sized horse. She's 13,
Okay.
but
But trained probably classically.
trained
And with
classically.
you.
Trained classically, and also there are gaps in her training. And I came from a good many years of serious bad habits.
Decades.
Oh, yeah.
Decades for me anyway.
And basically rode horses as though they were sort of furry motorbikes,
Yep.
to
Yeah.
go.
Yeehaw.
Right.
As
I
a
understand
child, that would
It
be
worked.
great.
Yes,
It
it
worked.
worked as when we
It
were
was
children.
fun. But as an adult,
Yeah.
it backfired, big
time,
time.
yes.
Wow.
So,
So your reflexes aren't the same. We all need
Very
the 2-second
interesting.
rule.
yeah, just a
I mean,
slow.
there are more women that I know that I talk to, and we talked about this in the car, who have just stopped riding.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
They just say,
I used to ride as a
my
child.
horse died, or I
yes.
used to do
And
this.
if I
used to do-"
can, again, and most of the people that come to me, which is really sad, when I was working with Scott, he wanted me to promote this, and I said, well, what am I supposed to call myself? The Last Chance Ranch? Because except for Cynthia, who we're going to meet in a couple of weeks, she's finally going to be back from vacation. Most people come to me after they've had an accident,
Yeah.
after
Yeah,
they've been
crisis.
hurt.
Yeah.
And
Well,
they're
you have
at
to
that
be
point,
solutions
at our
oriented if you
age,
wanna-
do we really want to go back there? And what happens is you want to ride your horse, and you're thinking of it all from a physical perspective. I can't move like I used to. I'm a little stiffer. I'm not as flexible. I'm
Right.
not as quick. So I can't ride anymore because I could never ride the horse if he did that. I can ride, but if the horse spooks, God forbid, I'm going to get killed.
That's
they
right.
come to me with all this, and I call it, baggage.
It is back.
And what I do is I say, forget about your bodies, girls. Okay, forget about your physique. Let's work your mind a little bit.
Right.
Yes.
Let's
I
get a
think-
little bit of an education about what a horse is, how he moves, why he does the things he does. And then before you know it, and I saw the look on your face before you know it, it's like, I am in control. You get that feeling, and it's a feeling.
And you can see the look in her face.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like, oh, this can work.
It can
Oh,
work.
that's
I can
wonderful.
ride again.
Well, well, I can relate to that because the last time I had been on a horse, I was 45. I took a fall, and I never got on again. Here I am, 72, and I'm on a horse again. Granted, very slowly, a little bit of walking, maybe a trot, Okay, but I'm working with Margaret's method, and it's working. The hardest thing, though, is what you described, is for me, it was like driving a car. I never thought about the horse's feet or where they were.
You have to drive a
what
standard now.
or what that felt like. I knew.
Drive a standard.
What did I know? I knew heads up, heels down, position through the arm, the elbow, the hip, da-da-da-da. And there I was in my position, looking ahead and driving him like...
You knew
I
what
kn-
to do with
And
your
if you-
body, but
yeah.
you didn't know how to control the horse's
That's
feet.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I think we were all taught just put a heavier bit in, put more metal in the mouth, put
Yes.
a twisted
Yeah.
bit,
Yeah.
put double reins on, and you were riding to the mouth.
And a German Olympic martingale. No.
Yeah, I mean, just use more
Tie that head down.
Right.
harsh metal,
Yeah.
then learn how to understand
Yeah,
the
Beth-
questions.
Beth touched on that last week.
Yeah.
It's like, I didn't want to do that. That wasn't me.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't want to treat my horse like that.
Yeah.
And Noelle, I'm going to single out Noelle here for
Oh,
me.
good.
The emotion.
My nose is running.
Okay. For the 5 parts of the circle, what was the hardest for you?
Oh. Oh. Probably, I want to say disengagement.
What was the skill that you had to work on the most?
Oh, backing up is always annoying.
Yeah,
Straight.
straight.
Backing up straight. And then knowing exactly when to go in the opposite direction.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Back up and disengage and then to move forward. Correct. Once
Yeah.
you back up,
Yeah.
Right.
move that front end over and then go in that
Yeah.
either to the right or to the left.
Right.
But you back up, you've got to disengage that front end again.
And
That's
those are
really
things
hard.
that
That I find
Really
hard. And
hard.
Lois has been watching when we're in the class. She go, oh, geez, maybe come to my house. We can work on this. And the way my brain works, because I'm both left and right-handed, it's very hard for me. I have to really work hard at that. because
We all do.
I get very confused with the right and the left, so I have to think about it. So that was difficult. It's
Yeah.
getting better, especially if you hold the flag and the rope in one
Right.
hand.
That's what I have to do.
And Margaret, she came over to the house, and and she worked with me on that, and it was terrific. And what a response the horse had!
Right.
Because if he did not disengage that hind end as he was going, if he comes too close, you could have it right there, and then you switch it over, and then you're on your way.
right.
So it was
it's
really
learning
cool.
how
I
to
loved that.
learning how to use the equipment.
Yes,
But
learning
you-
how to use the equipment. Yes.
We're more emotional with our own horses, and you just strip the emotion out of it
Yeah.
Yes.
and just say, that's not what I asked for. Now try it this way. And then when they do, and you give them the release and the freedom is like saying thank you.
Right. Right.
And they say, oh, okay, I can do that.
And Kathy says, I'm on my horse now. I'm just walking, but all that you've
not
done
just.
to
Wow.
get to that point has given you all the information that you needed to feel safe enough
To
to
do
get
that.
back up on
That's
the horse
right.
again. And it's about being with your horse, not
Yes.
on your horse.
Well, that's
With
right,
your
Margaret.
horse.
And I'll interject this. Most people watching our show today probably have learned to lunge a horse. They've probably learned the way I learned was gradually you push them out as a baby, and then you form the V. You're in the middle and you stay there and you're like this, like a pie, around, around, and they must stop right where they are, okay?
Yeah.
Then you go up and you say, good horse, and then you go to the other side and do that. You asked what part, the 5 parts of the circle that are difficult for me. Right now I'm in kindergarten. Everything.
Yeah.
But I have found, and that if I'm holding the flag in the hand, and like this, and go that way, and the hardest part is flipping my flag to have him
Go to the other
disengage
side.
But the worst part was, all right, I'm backing him up. I'm standing there. I'm looking at the back. I'm backing, and now I need to ask him to go over. Well, here's Kathy. I finally learned that asking him to go over wasn't really that,
Right.
and then just come. Now, I've been bringing my arm around and like this. I don't have it yet. I really don't have it yet. I get all confused and I have to stop. But we're getting there.
I think also you'll find after a while your body will become that flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So if you even when you're and I handle my horses a lot without anything on them because I just
Liberty
have
work.
to.
do that. Yeah. Now, and if you want that hind quarter to move over, if you have a certain position, they'll move that hind quarter over or the front end over.
Right. And the flag is an extension of you,
Yeah.
because if you noticed what Kathy did when she was describing, and which is what all new students do, you ask your horse to move, and if he doesn't,
You go after him.
Right.
Yes.
okay,
Counts.
and that's
Right.
usually where I stop people right away is, wait a minute, I want to see if you can get the horse to move away from you by standing balanced, just like a balanced seat in the saddle.
Yeah.
You learn how to move your horse from a balanced position, and if he doesn't, you just try a little harder. You don't throw yourself off balance.
Right.
Just like if a horse doesn't stop, unless people have learned how to disengage a hind quarter or circle or whatever, they just pull harder. Well, the harder you pull, the more things go off balance. And if you learn how to balance yourself on the ground with the horse and how to position, the other skill, your horse to move a certain quarter and adjust and move where you need to move and stay in position, it'll all come to you. But that's what we do. This thing is bigger than us. It's beautiful. We want it to happen, and we want to help.
Yeah.
And
But
so-
it's that motion
Right.
that turns you from a partner into a predator.
Yeah.
The horse
Oh,
doesn't really.
yeah, that's a good
Right,
point.
That's a good point.
You know,
Yes.
this is a
Predator.
predatory move.
Right.
but more
versus,
important, it throws you
partnering.
off balance too.
It does.
It does.
But your mindset is that you're a predator.
Yeah.
Like, forget the part that you're going to fall over.
And because usually when you do that, what do? You look up at his face. You
Right.
stop looking
Exactly.
at his feet.
and that's predatory too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, so there's
it's-
a lot of little things, and working in. I like to do the workshops. But I'll do personal lessons. I don't mind personal lessons, but I encourage people to do the workshops because. Number one, many people getting back into it, they're nervous if there's 5 or 6 other horses and 5 or 6 other people and there's so much going on. It's hard for them to focus. But the way I present it to people is bring your horse to the workshop in a group. The horse is a herd animal.
Absolutely.
It's funny you said that, Margaret, because I've been at least 3 times up to your barn in one of your works as a spectator, not with a horse. Auditor, is that? Okay. Thank you very much. I want to get that.
The gladiator came.
You know what? So you see, this is her financial background. Auditor. I think of an accountant. Okay, no, auditor.
Wall Street
Oh,
girl,
she's a Wall Street gal. Okay, as an auditor, watching from the ground, you instructing, it's been very beneficial.
Well, it
And-
is because you see different combinations. You see the horse-human relationship in 4 or 5 different combinations,
Right.
and you can identify. That's why I tell new students, you start out in the classroom and you learn the language. which one of our questions at the end of the show today is going to be based on that, the language. If you don't understand, I went for a long time just teaching how to disengage the hindquarter, and then one day a woman came up to me and she said, "What exactly do you mean by disengage the hindquarter?"
Right.
And a little bell went off, and I said, "Oh, okay, if I turn it around and I put myself in the auditor's position, or I'm
can't
trying
see
to
it,
teach
yeah.
something with this language, if you don't understand the word or the language that I'm using, you're not going to see what I'm trying to show you."
Right, right.
One of the things that Lindsay and I were talking about in the car, probably I was more talking, is I think the biggest obstacle I think that people face with their horse is, especially women, is they think that talking at their horse is communicating with them.
Yeah.
And you can talk till you're blue in the face.
He-
And if your horse doesn't understand you, it doesn't matter what you think.
Right.
True.
And women in particular cannot get past, it doesn't matter what you think. If the horse doesn't understand you, think all you want,
Yeah.
but it doesn't, you're not
Yeah.
communicating, and you're not a partner with your horse.
Right. And that's
And
why
you're not going to ride to the feet, and you are going to come off when the horse spooks. And then you're going to get hurt, and you're going to start complaining.
Yeah.
And you're going to be a victim.
That's why we use the outline, and that's why I drew up
Right.
the outline, so that rather than have it be a scenario where, well, Margaret said, blah, 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 no, it's like all the facts are up on my wall, on my
Right.
indoor, and when something like that comes up, I can say, I think this has to do with this skill. I think this has to do with the skill of positioning. Change your position and try again.
And of course,
And communication, like you can talk all you want is true, but there's a difference in the intonation of your voice when you're communicating your horse. You know, and trot up
yeah,
and walk.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, like
Yeah,
not
energy.
trot, 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 trot. You
Tune
know,
out.
it sounds like a skip on a record, and
That's
and
right.
it doesn't have any meaning to the horse because it's all, learn how to talk to your horse.
Right.
And you know,
Learn how to
Margaret,
communicate. It's
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
to be two-way.
two-way, and I'd like to take an opportunity, as long as we're talking about all this, to mention the fact that in the Better Deal, all these things are covered with pictures and explanations.
Right.
I gained a lot from reading your book, The Better Deal, and it helps because I take it to the barn with me all the time.
Yeah.
And I go into when I'm practicing, and I have to go back to the book and do it all over again.
Well, that was
But
my
there's a
goal, to try
reason
to
this
come
takes
up with a
3
way
years.
to explain it to people that was easy to understand.
Yes.
And you basically have to take it down and tear it all apart. That's what I did with the 5 parts of the circle. And when you first start with me, I'm sure Lindsay can attest to this, we spend a lot of time just on one movement until you understand that movement. And then you put them together. So when you see the 5 parts of the circle, that young girl that was with that horse has been at this for 3 or 4 years. That's why she can handle that large horse.
Well, and the other thing is, in handling the large horse and doing it repetitively, theoretically, every time you come together.
Every
Right.
time.
Not just when you're going to ride.
Right.
Yeah.
I like
Every
the way
time.
I think that is important because it's a sort of a how do you do and how are
Right.
we in sync? And I do find that the energy you have to put into it, or the movement of the flag, or the movement of the rope, can be so gentle. And I think
Very much so.
and I
Yes.
think that just builds more and more confidence. One of the things that I noticed in last week's show or something, it was about a marriage,
The wedding, yeah.
the
Oh,
wedding, and the
in
woman,
India,
the
yeah.
Right.
owner was
It was
saying
Beth,
she
yeah.
spent some time with her horse, just being with the horse
Right.
side by side. So when costumes came on and dancing and noises, that relationship was solid.
With
And I
the
went,
she and the
"Oh,
horse, yes.
great."
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was
Yeah.
kind of going, just slowing it down. And you just, I keep hearing, I can train your horse in 3 weeks or something. And you're kind of
Yeah.
going,
Lie to your
I
friends.
was so glad to hear you say repetitively, 3 to 4 years. I went, oh, good. I'm not a
Yes,
failure
right.
yet.
There's time
yeah.
for me.
There's
There's
time.
time. There's time.
Yeah.
Time.
Because
But
you're
you-
covering
you-
all aspects of
Yeah.
it. You're not just, and we look at our age, and even now in this day and age, we're looking at the horse-human relationship a little differently than we used to.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
evolved. It's come a long ways. The reason I chose the authentic horsemanship, I was raised with traditional training methods for years, they were humane until they weren't.
Yeah.
They were humane until something
Yeah,
happened and the
yeah.
horse broke the halter or bolted and got away or spooked and dumped a rider,
Right.
and then they weren't. Then we would lay them down on the ground and put them through a course of subjection, and it all worked. It all worked. But the way most people feel about that is it breaks a horse's spirit when you truss them up like a turkey and force them to do something. And what it does is they learn to submit
Right.
Until they
Right.
explode.
until they explode. And
Yes.
I would rather put more time, more work, more energy into developing an understanding between that horse and myself. The rules are the rules, and the rules are strict, but the rules are the horse's rules, not ours.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest difference. It goes by the herd rules. It goes by the laws of nature. So when you do have to do something, like you say, very gentle move, when you're trying to get that across so that you can wind up with a gentle move, it's not with force.
Right.
Right.
It's very short and it's very sweet. And the horse, you're always returning the horse to his freedom, to give him the opportunity to choose if he wants to be with you or he doesn't want to be there.
The word motive comes to my mind. I would say to my audience right now and our audience, what is your motive? What motivates you to want to ride?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it is in your motivation.
Yeah.
If it's motivating you because you want to look pretty on the horse and have all the outfit and the boots and everything else, well, I don't think that's the way you want to go, because you will soon find out that
What dirt looks like.
right. Now, I'm seeing that we have 15 minutes left.
Okay, we
And,
should go to
and
the
before we
questions.
get into our questions, I want to tell Margaret that I do have a question too.
Okay.
So I'll be your third question. How's that? Or
Oh,
your
you'll be the
first
third
one.
question.
Well, either way. But
Okay.
I want to. So we have the 15 minutes. So I'm going to give it back to Margaret and see
Okay.
where you want to go from there.
We have a couple of questions, interesting ones when we first opened up, had to do with the question, what is the difference between yielding the hindquarters and disengaging the hindquarters?
Oh, yeah.
Oh. What's the difference between yielding the hindquarters and disengaging the hindquarters? There's no difference.
Oh.
A yield is a move away. When you ask a horse to yield to you, you're asking the horse to move away from you. You yield the front end over. Usually use the term yield when you're talking about the front end, disengage when you're talking about the back end. But if you think about it, when you ask a horse to disengage, you're asking his inside hind foot to step in front of the outside hind foot, which is away from you, which is a yield. He's yielding his hindquarter away from you. At the same time, he's disengaging it. I don't know if that makes it any clearer.
Well, think of a yield, a circle, like we yield down here when we come into the, up in here. To
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
Yeah.
You have to yield.
Yield is
the
moving
right.
away.
So
Moving
moving
away.
away.
Whether it be the front or the
Right,
back,
or the
or
back.
you're in front
Right.
asking him to
Right.
back up, or you're in the back asking him to move forward. If in the circle, when you drive him forward with the flag, you're asking him to yield to the flag forward.
Yeah.
To move to the flag.
When you're in front and you raise your hand, you're asking him to yield back away from you. Yield is to give the right of way to the other. What's the horse is doing? The horse is yielding to you. He's backing away from you or moving away, whichever direction. The difference between the yield and the disengage is more the technical term that's used. That's what goes on with the horse's feet.
Yes.
He has to be engaged in order to disengage. He has to be walking forward, because in order for this foot to go forward in front of the other hind foot, he has to be engaged. So the difference is, one is a technical term and the other one is a horse yielding, which is what happens when the hindquarter disengages. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's that question. And then the other one is interesting.
The first one was interesting.
Yeah.
Mark.
Okay. How do you maintain consistent behavior in your horse when multiple people are riding it?
Oh, good question. Yeah.
Okay, so you think about maybe a share lease, or maybe there's 2 or 3 adults riding one horse at a boarding stable. They all split the cost, and so 3 people use them. They ride them different days of the week. How do you maintain the consistent behavior with your horse? You train the people to handle the
Yeah,
horse consistently.
same.
You lay down, whoever is the owner
right.
of the horse, you say, this is the way we handle the horse. If I'm more than willing to teach you, or more than willing to show you how to do it, and then you just have to trust that the
Yes.
people are doing that.
Yes.
I run into this all the time in boarding stable situations,
Yes.
and lots of times it's the owner coming to me because of the way the barn people, the grooms or whatever, handle the horse going in and out. Sometimes it's the grooms coming to me saying, the owner of this horse is just, I can't get, because they turn it loose in the pasture and just pull the halter off, and the horse bolts.
Bolts.
Right.
Yeah.
Habits, and it's a responsibility that
Right.
we all have to take.
So,
Very true.
in
It's very
the
good.
interest of time, we have 10 minutes now. And I want to, can I ask my
Yes, you
question?
can.
Okay. Last night, I happened to be at the library, and an experienced horsewoman came in that I've known for years. And I mentioned the show to her and to watch, and I hope she watches our next show. I told her about it. And she expressed to me that over the winter she put her horse at another barn. She usually keeps it at her house, but because the other barn had an indoor arena, she could ride through the cold weather. So she brought her horse there, and of course he was in a different herd. Now her horse, who is a 20-year-old and quiet, was not so quiet anymore. She had a little more difficult time riding him, and of course, I'm sure she figures a way to get him back, but why would that be? Why would the change in going to another barn and then the same rider riding him at that barn and getting a different horse out of him?
Well, there's several factors involved in that. What you mentioned right away is the change in the herd structure,
Okay,
the change in the environment.
right.
Many times, backyard horse owners or people who keep their horses at home have their own setup. The horses are free to go in and out when they want. Most boarding situations, your horse has to be in a stall. Maybe the hours were different, so he had to adapt to that.
Okay,
Okay, maybe he's not used to riding in an indoor,
okay.
so he has to adapt to that. These are all things that would come up that people would say this is the reason why, but what the reason is, if somebody would have spent time with that horse, establishing their leadership and showing the horse, and if the people who handled the horse would follow that, there would be a lot less of that going along. Any horse in a new situation, unless, like we talked with Beth, was the show that you saw, she's forever horses on the trailer, here, there, different situations and crowds, so the horses sort of naturally follow her lead in things like that. You take a horse that just lived at home for 3 or 4 years, and now he's going to go live in a different situation for 3 or 4 months. He can adapt to that just fine, as long as you don't fuss over it.
Okay,
Good.
it's
As a
funny
leader.
because I did say to her, see, some of Margaret rubbed off on me. I said, I think you're going to have to establish yourself as the herd leader again.
Yeah.
That's what I said to her, and of course,
for you.
and of course,
Right, good for you,
she
good for
she understood that,
Right.
and I know she knew what she had to do. But I told her about the show, and I hope she's
that's great.
watching us today.
Right.
And
Great.
that was my question. Thank you,
I
Mark.
feel for her. I think that's a tough situation, and many times people should not get intimidated or afraid to tell people how you want your horse handled. Now that we're educated more on this, I think that you need to feel
Self-confident.
self-confident
Yeah,
in how
asking for it,
you
Right.
yeah.
And the
go about-
biggie is, when to ask for help.
Definitely.
Yes.
Be
Yeah.
willing
Yes.
to ask for help. A lot of people
Right.
don't know who
Right.
to ask for help.
Right.
And it depends on the question you have. If you have a technical question about the judge didn't pin me because of my position,
Right.
that's a riding question.
Right.
But if
Right.
it has to do with the behavior of your horse
Yeah.
or how you can control the behavior or be safe around it, that's a horsemanship question.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And don't be
Yeah.
afraid to ask for help. I
Yeah.
think that's how I found
Yeah.
you. I needed
Right.
help.
Right.
So did I.
People, I
Yeah.
think, confuse being a rider. They think if you're a rider, you're
Your horse-
equestrian, you know it all.
Yes.
No,
Right.
horsemanship is a totally
Totally
different
Right.
Yeah.
kettle of fish, and which has been ignored.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
we didn't place value on it until
No. No.
Well,
we
that's-
did not.
Well, I
That's-
think
yeah.
nobody. I mean, if there's one thing I've learned from Margaret and the parts of the circle, is that it's really at the core of understanding how to communicate with your horse.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the more you practice circle work, the more you're going to have a partnership with your horse,
Nicely
rather
said.
than a
Yeah.
domination.
And the
and
more you're
control.
going to understand how your horse moves, which makes it a
Right.
whole lot easier to ride him.
Yeah.
And
And
ride
when
to
you're
the feet.
riding him, you can get that.
Yes.
And everybody starts on the ground, and then what's the first thing I ask you to do when you get on your horse? Do the 5 parts of the circle from the saddle.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's a lot easier on the
Yes.
ground than it is under saddle once you know how to do it on the ground. It's very hard to pull it all together.
It is.
Yeah.
It's
Mouth,
very hard.
Yield the front over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I encourage
dance.
everybody to
dance.
come
And this is what I
audit
say with the
Margaret's
work. This is the
workshops.
reason I love
Yes.
my workshops, is because people
great.
learn to learn together.
Yeah.
They see
Right.
the, and the horses are calm when they come.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is having problems with their horse, I help them with it, and then the horse settles down and everybody's ready to learn. But it's okay to share these kind of things.
Well, I see it's time. We have 5 minutes for Margaret to probably give her website, her email for questions and things. Would you like to wrap that up, Margaret?
Yeah, if they put, I think we have a little thing that can go up on the screen that's got my website on it, and it also has my phone number and email. You can email or text. Written questions are the best. You never know when you're going to catch me on the phone. And then if I have it in writing, I can print it out and we can present
Now,
it.
yeah, there it is. And if you keep it up there a while so people can copy it,
Yeah.
yeah, on the screen.
You can either either email or text me the question, and we'll try to cover it on the next week's show, depending upon how many questions and how relevant they are to what
The
we're
topic,
talking
yeah.
about. And next week we're hoping to get one of my most senior students on the show, and we're going to talk about. We're going to go back to talking herd rules, and we're going to talk about safety at the mounting block.
Oh,
yeah,
right,
Very good.
right.
Right.
Very good.
And I know everybody has had. Everybody's
Some
had
good
that kind of experience.
Before you even take a step, it's thunk.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's a pretty precarious position. I know when I was learning, and you go to the masters and you go to these workshops, and you don't use a mounting block. You learn how to get your heel up on a fence and mount a horse from your fence. It's a safer position to be in, because when you're in that precarious position, it's real easy for the horse to move and you to wind up on the ground. But if you have a fence with your elbow hooked over, you
Right,
can keep yourself
Well,
safe.
those were
Or
the
just
days
get a
I could
shorter
mount.
horse.
Those were the days I could mount from the ground. Just step
Right,
there.
well, many of us can't these days.
I can't anymore.
I just had this conversation with Kelly. I said, it's hard to represent authentic horsemanship and then start using mounting blocks, because it's kind of
I
don't go
know.
together. But there's many of us who we just can't mount from the ground anymore.
No,
we
I
we
can't.
don't have that. So what we have to do is put more training on our horses.
Yeah.
And you
get
can do that
shorter
yourself.
Horses. That's what Noelle and I do.
Yeah, no, I've been mounting. I like to mount from the, but maybe we could have a talk on that, on how to
Yeah.
properly
Yeah.
mount from the ground.
I
'Cause
don't-
I do still,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
enjoy
Good for
it.
you.
Well, that's
Well,
all going to be
yeah.
covered on the next show.
Okay.
Everything from how to park your horse there, to how to put your foot in the stirrup,
Right.
to where to put your weight, You know, there's a few things that happen that people didn't, and they're just little things like how to position your foot that helps your balance.
Right.
And
Next
take
week will be
yoga.
good.
Well,
right.
we're down to our last minute, and so what I'm going to say to our wonderful producers back there, Wayne and Dorothy,
That's right.
that
Great.
I'm going to start getting ready to say goodbye, and wish everybody a good evening. So we'll see how we do here.
And thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Oh, you're
you
welcome.
very much.
And listen, don't forget, we're the Boomer Cowgirls with professional horsewoman Margaret Beeman.
Yes.
Yes.
Please don't forget that. And remember that we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and don't forget to text Margaret and with your questions. And if you want to talk to me on Facebook, Kathy Johnson, I can get the messages to Margaret. All of us can. And how are
And
we
the
doing?
workshops start up in April.
April. Yeah.
Oh,
April.
good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you so much.
Okay, this is Kathy Johnson saying have a good evening and a better tomorrow and happy trails on your pony. Take care.